My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about an article that somebody sent me, and it's about pornography. And I looked over the article a little bit, and it seems to be pretty indicative of a lot of the articles that you see about pornography. And so I thought I would do an assessment of this. For today's show, I want to do an assessment of this particular article, and I want to look at the supposed dangers of pornography. There's too much information here, so I think maybe in another show, I want to talk about, is there any possible benefits of pornography? And I want to talk about, is it actually related to erectile dysfunction? Because you're going to see a lot of articles and information about that as well. So I'd like to also assess that. But for today, let's just go through this particular article. And one of the reasons why I want to do this is because of the articles that I've looked at. Most of the literature seems to be extremely sensationalistic. It tends to be ideological, rooted in a lot of puritanical judgment, and it doesn't really consider the facts and common sense. So I think it's important that we do this. Sex and money are two big issues for people, so let's choose one today, which would be sex. So let's start from the very beginning. This article starts off with, mountains of sex research have established that males are more visually oriented and more naturally drawn to visual images. Okay, first sentence, we're already starting with this. By the way, I can't get this author. It doesn't say it, but I think it's from familyeducation.com. So let's take a look at this. Mountains of sex research have established that males are more visually oriented. Yes, that was true up until about the 1970s, but that was a long time ago. None of the evidence shows that anymore. That was about 50 years ago. So again, this guy really, I'm assuming it's a man, he really needs to update his information because that's not true. Way back when you would do self-report, you would ask people, you would take, like say a woman and say, okay, here's your husband, no matter what he looks like. And here's this stranger over here with a V-shaped abs, muscular, good-looking guy. Are you attracted to him? And of course, most of the wives would say, absolutely not. No, my husband is great. And this is because of culture. Because men have basically put this on women that they cannot be open about their sexuality and what their desires are. So as time has moved on and we become more equal, you're going to start to see better and more honest answers, let's say. And women now are becoming more open about their sexuality. And that's a good thing. They're not completely there yet, obviously, but they are moving in that direction. So no, it doesn't show that women really are not visually oriented anymore. As a matter of fact, we need to really bring in the important information from the plethysmograph. So what's a plethysmograph? The plethysmograph, it measures the amount of blood that moves in to somebody's sexual organs. So if you say you're not excited or turned on by something, but the plethysmograph says you are, it means you're not being honest about your sexuality, and the plethysmograph has the answers. So they've done studies on this, and they're really, really interesting. So let's take a look at this, because I'll tell you right off the top, men are not more visually oriented, and they're not more naturally drawn to visual images. So let's go with heterosexual men to start. Heterosexual men were found out to be stimulated by heterosexual sex, obviously. They were also stimulated by two women being together, obviously. And they were also stimulated by a girl being by herself. We understand this. Now, the more interesting part, this is what heterosexual women were stimulated by. Heterosexual sex, same sex between two girls, same sex between two women, solo, a man by himself, solo, a woman by herself. And interestingly enough, they were excited and visually turned on by animals having sex. So as you can see here, women were more visually stimulated by everything whereas men had very specific desires and needs. Also, the plethysmograph has shown that women are 8 times more turned on by the thought of having sex with a handsome stranger than with their partner or husband. Interesting. So what they've also found out is that when we're talking about sex, women are probably going to lie about it more than 50% of the time. Again, no judgment here. I understand the culture, and that's why many women would lie. But again, this article starts off with an absolute fabrication. None of it is true. So let's move on. That's enough just off of one sentence. Let's see what else this person has to say. He says, biologists argue that being sexually stimulated by the sight of the female form and its posturing is directly tied to mating behavior and the propagation and survival of our species. Interesting, because that is also a completely clumsy sentence of what he said, and besides the fact that it's not true. This type of thinking right here, it denies women agency. The way he's describing it is that men pick and choose girls based upon their posturing. Like we have a bunch of women sitting around waiting to be picked by a man. So first of all, number one, it's sexist. Number two, it denies women their agency, like they have any power. It's also incredibly intellectually dishonest because it does not work like that. It also objectifies women, which is something interesting because I keep saying that objectifying women is bad, especially in porn. But here we go. The species wouldn't continue if it wasn't for the posturing of women. What kind of posturing are we talking about here? You know, like men are just waiting around to see when the next time a girl's going to bend over, and that's what creates the species. This guy's insane. I don't even know how he can write this and be okay. Or how did it come to light that I can actually read this? It's insane. This type of thinking, though, is what you'll see in a lot of conservative think tanks. Like Jordan Peterson would say. Like, he talks about women wearing makeup and how if they're wearing makeup in the workplace, they're not that serious. What they're really doing is that they're looking for a mate somehow. So I just don't understand this. And if we really do get into propagating the species in animals, what you'll see is actually the opposite. Because it's the males who are always trying to show off for the females. Whether we're talking about lions being strong, having the big mane, or if we're talking about birds, you know, even that saying, shake your tail feather, you know, we've taken that to mean that some girl is dancing. No, it's not. It's all about male birds trying to get the attention of females. And throughout all the animal kingdom, you would see this. It's the males who are the ones who are posturing. So this guy really has that wrong as well. By the way, I'm going to try to continue this. It's obviously July 4th. There's people doing fireworks and all that. Luckily, my dogs haven't been barking too much, but I'm sure they will. So let's expect that. So let's go with the third line here. He says, in my opinion, there is no body of hard evidence that has ever proven a direct correlation between pornography and crime, or pornography and increased sexual assaults in the general population. A couple of things here. Number one, he's right. Okay, so I got to give credit where it's due. There has actually been no correlation between porn and violent crime. Actually, there is a little, but it's where there's more access to porn, the violent crime rate actually goes down. Now, you can't say that this is causation, right? So the evidence is not clear, but the evidence will show that there is a correlation that where there's access to porn, violent crime goes down. But it's very hard to be able to put those two together to see if they really work together. But he is correct that there does not seem to be a rise in crime. But it's interesting here of what he says, though. He says, in my opinion, there is no body of evidence. Listen, nobody cares about your opinion. There's either evidence or there's not. And in this case, there's not. So you don't have to put in your opinion. Maybe I'm being too picky here, but I did notice that. I thought that was a little interesting of what he said. Let me throw in this, because I did say something about conservatives before. I think liberals also have some issues with this, and I'll give you one. When we're talking about pornography and we're talking about violent crime, a lot of feminists, let's say probably most, they try to sell you this, that sexual assault or rape is a crime of violence. It's not a crime of sexuality. Now, I don't know everybody's or every feminist point of view on this, of why they feel that way, but I do get the idea that it's a feeling and it's not a fact. I think one of the things that we all need to do for each other is to be empathetic and compassionate for each other, and that me as a man, I cannot fully understand what a woman goes through in any area of life. But again, as a man, I would also like the same respect, is that a woman really does not know fully what it's like to be a man. And I don't know if it helps or hurts. They have their reasons, but feminists keep saying that rape is it's an act of violence, not sex. Let me tell you from a man's point of view. If there's an erection involved, you might want to consider that there's at least a little bit of sex involved. Just a thought, consider that, right? Because if it was straight violence, you would punch somebody in the face, right? You would steal their money. You wouldn't have sex with them. I'm not saying you can't have sex violently, but I think you get what I mean. I think we need to be open to a better discussion. As fireworks go off in the back, I think somebody really either agrees with me a lot or disagrees with me totally. I'm not really sure. So let's move on. So he says, so if it's so normal for our sons to become excited by sexually stimulating images, and there's no evidence telling us that porn will turn our sons into sexual deviants, then why should we worry? That's a good question. Let's see what kind of answers he has. He said, you need to be worried about your son's frequent, intense relationship with pornography, primarily because of what it teaches him about sex and women. If you allow porn to be the principal sex educator of your son, you risk serious impairment of his healthy psychosexual development. So I'm going to stop it there, because there's just so much there that he's saying. There's a term that we should know. It's called Gish galloping. And there was a guy named Gish, obviously, and when he was debating people, he would put out one lie, and he would lie so many times that it was hard to debate him without trying to address the lies. And if you tried to address all the lies, you never got your information out there, and Gish would win the debate because you were not actually saying what you needed to say. You were stopping him from lying. This is a version of Gish galloping right here. And there's a couple of other things I want to point out. So he says, allowing porn to be the prime educator, you risk serious impairment of a boy's psychosocial development. True. I don't think there's anybody on this planet that would argue that. You know, the average age now that young men are seeing porn is at 12. That's obviously way too young to be watching porn. We all know this. This is a straw man argument. And in every single article about porn, I see this. Who is arguing the other way? I have never seen one person say that porn is beneficial and should be the prime educator. So this is not an argument against porn. It's an argument against neglectful parenting, even abusive parenting. As a matter of fact, I was just at a July 4th get-together before I came here, and I was talking to a 14-year-old. We had a good conversation, and one of the things he told me was that he was only given a phone in the last 3 months. I still think he shouldn't have a phone, but still, having one at 14 is pretty good compared to what most kids are getting. These kids should not be having access. They should not be able to sit in their room. They should not be able to watch hardcore porn when they're 10, 11, 12 years old. It's ridiculous. It's not against porn. It's against bad parenting. There's a big difference here. And this person who wrote this article, of course, doesn't mention that. Let's talk about more. Again, this gets to me. Prime educator. I want to know the person who thinks that porn is a good prime educator for a 12-year-old. Listen, you might as well get to make them watch The Fast and the Furious to learn about driving. Like, it makes no sense. Again, nobody's arguing this. What he doesn't say in here, which I find interesting, because at least he didn't do this, but they also say that some porn is connected to child trafficking. And unfortunately, it's totally disgusting, but it's true. Again, I don't know anybody that's for child trafficking. So to put that in, to say that pornography is not, it can never be beneficial for couples or for anybody, and it's only dangerous, is ridiculous, especially using the child trafficking argument, because nobody says that. And again, that's not a porn problem. That's a legal problem. Okay, that's not the same thing. So what else is he saying here? I just lost the thing. I'm gonna have to open this real quick, because he says a lot of stuff. Okay, he says the porn will teach him that girls and women want and enjoy being sexually used, dominated, and humiliated by men. It will encourage your son to try out the harmful fantasies that porn offers, including the fantasy that women secretly want to be taken forcibly or that they want to be raped. And it also teaches boys to objectify women and to treat them as toys. Okay, let's take that, because that's a lot. So this is a very difficult subject for people. So I'm going to try to do this with kid gloves, so to speak. This thought that women want to be dominated, that they want to be taken forcibly, that they have rape fantasies. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to have to learn this. But if you know anything about women's sexuality, and you do any type of research, what you'll find is that those are all in the top fantasies for women. They do want to be taken forcibly by a stranger. They do have rape fantasies. They do have thoughts about S&M. I mean, one of the most popular books of all time for women was the 50 Shades of Grey, which is all about S&M. So you can't say that this doesn't exist. There's a new movie that came out that's super popular. I think it's called 365. And it's basically all about a man just basically, physically dominating and sexually dominating a woman, and treating her poorly. So you can't say it doesn't exist. It does exist. And for a lot of good guys out there, they can't seem to understand this. And it's like, wow, women are really like that? Yeah, not all of them. And as we go down, we look at more information here. 80% of women like rough sex. Now, it doesn't mean that all women have had rough sex. What it means is that the women who have had rough sex, 4 out of 5 really enjoy it and prefer it over tenderness sex, whatever you want to call that. Let's take a look at a very interesting book. It's called A Billion Wicked Thoughts. They used a study of 15,000 romance novels, which, let's say what it is, it's porn for women, right? It says, women like men with power and aggression, but they also want to be the one to tame him. So this ends up being really interesting for a lot of men, because they can't understand this. They're like, oh, all these girls that I really like and I treat them well, they want the jerk. They always want this guy that's mean, nasty, a little dangerous, a little violent, maybe even, has a police record. I forgot the name of it, but there's a name for women who fall in love with serial killers. That was loud. And it's out there, and it's out there for a reason, because it's popular. But let me say this before men get a little bit aggravated and they don't seem to understand. Listen, everything ends up being equal in the end. Because this is the same type of thinking that men have, right? Like, we like women who are very aggressive, let's say, and very sexually open for them, but not for everybody else. So it's the same thing with women. They like a guy that can be dangerous. They like a guy who has some can be physically dominating with other people, not them. So that's where the difference is. It's almost like when a person goes out there and they love having a Rottweiler or a pit bull, because they know that Rottweiler or pit bull can kill a person like that, no problem, and they can be very dangerous and they're very protective, but they have incredible loyalty for the one person that they love. And this is kind of what women want. Now, they want this so much that there's a lot of evidence out there that's really interesting. And by the way, there's a difference between fantasy and real life, so we got to throw that in too. But here's the thing, a lot of women like paranormal, because when we talk about alpha males, they want alpha males. We're talking about werewolves. We're talking about, they fantasize about vampires, right? Pirates. As a matter of fact, and this is really crazy, but if you watch King Kong, what you're going to see is this big, massive ape taking care of this one little girl. And she controls him. And in one of the versions of it, he's touching her and takes off her top. And then they go for a swim together in the water. And then he starts to blow on her to dry her hair. They make it very, very girlfriend-boyfriend sexual thing, which when I saw this when I was a kid, I thought it was really crazy. I still do. But as I got older, I kind of understand the women's psyche in that way, even though it's not something that I completely, I can have, I can look at it and get it, I guess, but I don't feel that at all. But I guess I can understand that. So women tend to move towards that. Now think of it like this too. I think we all know Woody Harrelson, right? Woody Harrelson was on Cheers. Now, would a woman go for Woody Harrelson on Cheers, who's a good guy and a nice guy, or would they go after the Woody Harrelson that was in Natural Born Killers? Now, in real life, you don't want to live a life with a serial killer. But in terms of fantasy, a woman is going to want to be with the dominant alpha male who's dangerous, who takes her forcibly in bed. Let's talk about objectification real quick, because he mentions it in here. Are women objectified in porn? Yes, they are. But here's the thing. We need to start looking at people as equals. When there's a man having sex with a woman, why do we all assume that the woman is being objectified? Because there's a reason why men are in these porn videos, not the ones with these people having fun videoing themselves. I'm talking about real porn stars, like the real big name porn stars. The reason why the male porn stars are there is because they look unusually large, like at a percentage that if you see it on TV, you'll probably never see one like that in real life. And they can perform. So that's not objectification. Listen, if you watch porn with a girl, there's no way, like as a man, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I was gonna get that job, but I'm underqualified, or I'm overqualified. Like, there's just no way. So again, I understand in relationships, porn is a problem, but it's not a porn problem. It's an insecurity problem, right? It's a lack of self-esteem problem. Because if you're a woman and you watch porn and you go, oh my God, I can't look like that woman, and I don't want my man looking at that. What do you think he's thinking? If you're watching on a 52-inch wide screen, and we're talking about objectification, they might see a girl's mouth, but they see a guy's thing, which on a 52-inch screen, that looks pretty scary, especially if you're a guy. You're like, well, if that's what you're thinking from me, you're not going to be getting that. Like, who can live up to that? Like, nobody. And by the way, if you know how porn is made, if the movie's an hour and a half long and they show you 10 sex scenes, that really only makes it there's like 9 minutes or less per scene. And yet the way they keep jump cutting it, they make it seem like the guy's lasting for like 5 days. That's not true either. But when you watch it, you're like, oh my God, you're going to expect all of this performance and all of this size from guys. And you know what? I would roughly say that the objectification, it goes both ways. I would say it's 50-50. You want to walk into a sex store? I live in Las Vegas. There's a sex store like on every corner. They're on the major streets. You can walk in anytime you want. And if you're a man and you walk in, well, a woman too, but when you walk in through the door, you get hit in the face with a bunch of plastic penises, right? All different sizes and colors and shapes. And if you're lucky, they can actually get the exact one that was fitted and measured from your favorite porn star. So think about that. Is that objectification? Like, and how many porn movies that actually show the guy's face? Not often. So listen, I think, if you're going to be an adult and you're going to utilize pornography maybe to spice up your life, we're going to have to be a little bit more mature. Because are they objectifying women? Yes, that's what porn is. We do that. They do that. Are they objectifying men? Yes, they are. That's what they do. That's what those men are there for. By the way, we objectify men all the time and we don't talk about that. You want to watch football on Sundays? I think they have a 53-man roster. That means you got 106 jacked up, immensely talented and physically dominating men wearing tights, playing football. That's not objectification. How about the UFC or boxing? Right? You get two basically great conditioned, physical, dominating alpha athletes, basically naked, in a ring. They're not objectifying. Listen, it's all about the body. They're punching each other in the head, trying to make each other unconscious. There's nothing emotional here. There's nothing that deals with super intelligence either. So again, let's just be honest about this. Again, top women fantasies we have to deal with. They do like to be dominated. Not all. But again, this guy says, oh my God, we might have to learn about that. Yes, you do. That would actually be a good thing. And think about this too, about women being objectified. Do women like to be objectified? Sure they do, but it's on their own terms, right? Nobody wants to be catcalled. Nobody wants to be somebody to say something rude. That's, of course not. That's not what we're saying. But if you're in a relationship with somebody you care about, you don't think the woman wants to be, be complimented on her body or her face or her looks or her attractiveness in any way? That's objectifying. Absolutely is. So we need to get away from some of this to say objectification is always bad. It's not always bad. Let's take a look at, if you look at the number one romance movies of all time, you know what the number one romance movie is for women? For women? Pretty Woman. It's about a rich, alpha, dominating, good-looking guy, prostitute, which is the number one role that women want in Hollywood. I'm not going to psychoanalyze that. It's just true. So think about it. So does Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman want to be objectified? Does she want to go and wear this clothing because it makes him like her more? And does she wants to wear a certain dress or a certain hat to satisfy his sexual desires and needs? Yes, that's the answer. She wants to be objectified. Every woman wants to be objectified in some way, shape, or form. Again, as long as it's on their terms and it's not hurting them and it's not done in a creepy way and it's not done by someone who's obviously it's an unwanted sexual advance. So I'm going to end it right here because it's already been kind of long and I know these fireworks are going. It's probably really annoying. Next time, I want to talk about, are there any benefits to porn? Which I think should be interesting because of what you read, everything is negative, negative, negative. And as I showed you here, 99% of it is garbage. So I want to talk about the benefits, and I also want to talk about, does pornography cause erectile dysfunction in men? Because again, that's a big issue these days and I keep talking about it. And I'm going to tell you that it's not true. But I'm going to extend that show, of course, so I can tell you why it's not true. So have a good July 4th, and I will be back next week.